In every society, press freedom and freedom of expression are fundamental pillars of democracy. They allow citizens to access information, hold leaders accountable, and participate meaningfully in national life. But in times of insecurity and governance challenges, this freedom are often under pressure. Across the country, journalists increasingly operate in a difficult environment, reporting on terrorism, banditry, protests, and government accountability while facing intimidation, harassment, arrest, and legal threat. Recent events, including the arrest and subsequent release of students who protested insecurity in Edo State, as well as repeated cases of journalists harassed, have once again raised critical questions about tolerance for dissent and the limit of free expression. At the same time, new challenges are reshaping the media landscape: digital regulation, the spread of misinformation, and economic pressure on inadequate journalism are redefining how news is produced and consumed. These forces not only affect journalists, but also the quality of information available to the public. Government argued that restrictions are necessary to protect national security and public order. This creates a delicate but critical tension. How do we safeguard national security without undermining the public's right to know?
The right of freedom of expression and the freedom of the press is a fundamental element of democracy, and not really do everyone wants to talk about this particular topic. It's sometimes a very discomforting topic to discuss, both by the government and the journalists and even citizens themselves, because everybody is probably in denial that, oh, my freedom is not really taken from me. But at the same time, it's a really good topic to talk about. And here on 360 Youth Dialogue, we are discussing on freedom of expression and the freedom of press in this time of Nigeria, in a insecurity time that we are facing in Nigeria. And joining me to do that, I have with me the deputy editor of Blueprint newspaper, and she's really a good hand. She's the Nawaj vice president, North Central. So good to have you, Mrs. Chizoba Ogbeche.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, such an honor to have you seated here with us in 360 Youth Dialogue.
It's my pleasure too.
I love your smile, by the way. Okay, before we talk freedom, let's have you say about how long have you spent working in journalism? What drew you into this profession?
Okay, I started just before the 2003 general election. I actually read sociology.
Oh, interesting.
And after graduation, I was actually looking for a job in government establishment, but I was being picky. Then I was saying that NNPC, CBN, and I actually did some of the tests. But at the last stage, I will always fall off. My other sister was practicing as a journalist in Daily Times those days. So often I would go to her office. So I became close to some of them, some of the journalists, and I could hear their conversation and participate and all. So there was an opening actually for a job, but it was for adverts.
Okay.
So my elder sister got to know and asked me to go. His FCDA owned paper, then it was Abuja Today newspaper. So I went there, and the advert people were not available. So I met the news editor. We just interacted, and after speaking with him for a while, so he was like, he needed to open up to me, because this advert is not an executive job. It was like an advert canvassing.
Okay.
You're on commission.
Okay.
And it's not something that is easy. But if I write the way I was speaking, that he thinks I'll be better in journalism. So that's how he now gave me an opportunity to freelance. He encouraged me to send stories and all. That's how I started. And eventually, when Leadership newspaper came on board, I got employment there, because in the Abuja Today, I was a freelance journalist. I was not given full employment. So when Leadership newspaper came on, I applied and I was employed. So I started with Leadership, and I grew. I became editor in charge of society, At some point, I was also appointed assistant news editor. Then eventually I moved on to Blueprints, where I have also grown and I became a deputy
editor.
So it's a mixed bag of experience.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's encouraging, sometimes it's not so encouraging. But journalism is like a vocation.
Okay.
You have to appreciate it, because if not, you will not enjoy most of your time there. But you find out that you have to, it's like a thankless job most times. In terms of remuneration, welfare, it's not the best of profession to be. But sometimes you find out that when your job or when your articles or investigation makes a difference in people's life,
exactly,
you feel fulfilled.
Exactly.
That you're making a difference. And with the Nigerian Association of Women Journalists, which is like the women angle of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, we get the opportunity to do even more beyond just our job, because we amplify the voice of the vulnerable, mostly women and people living with disability, just the minority in the society. So it gives us the opportunity, beyond just publishing story, to also affect the lives of people, women, children, and the vulnerable in society. So I would say it's been fulfilling.
Indeed, it's been fulfilling, because it looks all over you that you find fulfillment when it comes to journalism. And I like the fact that it was through your freedom of expression that you came on board on journalism. And you said it's not just about, writing stories, it's about speaking for people that are vulnerable. And I think that's what journalism is all about. It's not just press release and that. It's coining the trajectory and the whole thing that revolves around the society. But let's talk about, freedom of expression, freedom of the press. How free are we really in Nigeria when it comes to the press freedom, and when it comes to, citizens being expressive?
The freedom of expression is guaranteed under the Nigerian Constitution. The 1999 Constitution as amended under Section 39. Every citizen is allowed to express their opinion, hold an opinion, and speak out. But you know that sometimes is always not as it is said, because there are a lot of factors that impede that. In Nigeria today, the situation seems to be worsening, especially with the increasing insecurity, where as journalists, as citizens, there's a thin line between you have to overriding public interest as it is patriotism, having to draw the line where you stop or what you divulge, because some could be seen as inciting or going against the government of the day.
Yes.
So for journalists, we are torn in between being a mouthpiece for the people and holding the government accountable, because we're supposed to speak truth to power. But sometimes there are factors that restrain us, like ownership of a media organization is a big factor. You find that in Nigeria, a lot of media organizations are owned by politicians themselves, and they belong to particular political group. It will be difficult for you to publish or carry stories that are against their political interest. So the journalist has to now, sometimes you end up over censoring, self-censorship comes in, but sometimes it even goes to the extreme that there are stories that, truth be told, that cannot be published in some organization or cannot be carried in some because of the interest, because the owners of the media set it up for their own personal. It's a business to a lot of them. But for journalists, it's supposed to be like a vocation or something of interest we are doing. But you find out that you have to now find a middle point between the business interests and protecting the interests of the people and speaking for the people and holding government and people in authority accountable. So the dilemma is on the journalists to find a safe space. And peculiarity of journalism in our country, where some media organizations are not particularly bothered about the welfare of their workers. In the extreme, some don't even pay salaries. Others are not. There's no insurance. Your welfare package is not guaranteed. So you find out that sometimes there are stories you will not want to put yourself at risk to cover, even though it's in the interest
of the people.
And you have a responsibility to do it. But self-preservation also is the first rule of life, that you find out that you will now probably report it as a second-hand experience through witnesses instead of going to get. So if you encounter witnesses who want to also skew the narrative to protect their own interest, then you have a problem. You could also talk about the recent incident in Niger, where there was a debate of were they kidnapped, they were not kidnapped, and all of that. There are journalists that were there but probably could not get to the place. One, the organization may not have even provided a way without for them to do that. And you're looking at the end of the day, what police said was they were trying to create panic. But at the end of the day, panic was created.
Yeah, at the end of the day.
And some people's rights were denied because government has a responsibility, a major responsibility of protecting lives and property. And where a huge number of persons are kidnapped, and it has become like a custom or tradition, a regular thing, that over 100 persons are kidnapped in one fell swoop, and we want to sweep it under the carpet. It also makes it difficult for the people to confidently speak out. It took the CAN representative consistently
voicing out.
The chairman of local government, who reportedly gave figures of people who were kidnapped, recanted. Why? Probably he was under pressure by the government to keep it under wrap or to play down on it. So that's the situation. Both the journalists, people in positions of authority sometimes find themselves. So freedom of expression, your expression is supposed to be free, but sometimes you find that it's not that free.
Exactly.
It comes at a cost. We'll keep struggling as journalists to find the middle point. But you know that if you're sure that you're protected, or that your rights will be protected, then you find out that people might be more daring and more. Sometimes we'll watch international journalists and what they do, but you know that their condition of work and ours
are totally different.
So that could embolden them and make them. So we'll keep looking forward to a situation where probably there will be legislation that ensure and protect the rights of journalists and also provide for their welfare. Ensure that the welfare of every journalist is taken care of, and that media owners and media organizations live up to the expectation of their responsibilities as media houses.
That's right. As the eighth estate of the realm, as they call them. You know, I don't know about what it was like in the 1990s, during the military regime, but can you contrast for me between now? People are like, then it was very hard to express yourself. The media had no place, like they were restricted because of the military regime and all that. And some people are like, it was even better then because you can say a thing and you just have to say it right. I don't know, between now and then.
There's no basis for comparison. There's nowhere you can compare military regime and a democratic administration or dispensation. There's no basis for that. We know, I was not practicing then, but we have reports and evidence that some media houses had to go under to produce.
Exactly.
Some people had to even leave the country because the military regime was after them. Some media organizations were shut down, like Concord. You had a situation where this interview that we're having now and is being aired, you could have military officers out there waiting to shut it down. Will not even allow you finish it, or when they allow you, they could arrest me and the reporter, as we are coming out from this studio, because you said something that was against the government. The situation is not, we are not at the best of place as it is in Nigeria, but you cannot compare the military administration or dispensation. It was even during the military administration had the first parcel bomb, Delegiwa. It was them, but we've not had anything like that close to that. Yes, a lot of journalists have had issues where they've been arrested, but you find out that there are groups, the NGOs, the journalists, the bodies, the NUJ, NAWAJ, Guild of Editors, they always speak out. They rally around IPI. There are already organizations that can speak out and put pressure on government, and oftentimes the people involved are released. Because if you've gone against a constitutional provision, there's stipulation of how long the person, I think 72 hours, or you charge the person to court. But a situation where you even have reports of people allegedly being kidnapped, because when they are picked, you don't disclose your identity, you don't identify the organization you're working with, whether you're with the security outfit, police, DSS, or civil defense, or even the military, because those are things you should do. And the person that is arrested has the right to at least one phone call and to legal representation. But a situation where that is not done, then you're already trampling on the person's right of representation, because you have a right to also prove yourself, have your day in court, as it were. But you find out that most times they arrest and they release them, which means it's just about like teaching you a lesson, or putting fear in you, so that next time you don't report or speak on things like that. But it's not something that can thrive, because we have organizations that have defied even such, and they continue reporting, and it can only get better. So I don't think there's any
we can't compare the I mean, this is democracy.
Yes,
this is
and
time of
freedom
democracy.
of press is the bedrock of every democracy.
I would want to even ask you, before I say a thing on what I've gathered so far, why do you think freedom of expression now from citizens, and also freedom of the press on its own, is very important in a democratic system like in Nigeria?
It's an opportunity for the people, like I say, for media to hold the government accountable. If there are things that are not being, and we also, as media, we are agenda setters for the government.
That's right.
If there are projects, because we deal directly with the people, you know, projects that are being, let me use that instance, that you're having a project in a particular place, but this is the priority of the people. It's the media that usually can speak up and say, no, this is where the priority of the people should be here. That's setting agenda for the government to say, probably look at this first before you, like in FCT, there's been a lot of publications saying the government is doing very well in terms of infrastructure, but why not look at health sector too? We're talking about waste disposal, piling of, it was a debate in the Senate not too long ago, in the National Assembly, where they are saying that yes, while infrastructural development is okay, you could also look at health facilities, look at waste disposal, because it's only people who are alive that can drive on roads. So if there are roads and the people are sick, yes, the roads are important to, probably if somebody is sick, you can take the person to get medical attention. But if the hospitals are there, then you're sure somebody is just an instant and there to do. And the media has been doing a good job in terms of reporting why the administration should focus on other things other than just road infrastructure. And I think that obtains in other states. So, but for the people, you also speak out. It takes the people saying, no, this is where it hurts us more, this is where we want the attention of the government to be. Then for us, the media, we amplify it to get to the right. But thank God for social media, the new media. A lot of people can speak up, can even report. Yes, there's also lines that have been crossed. There's been abuses here and there in terms of the citizens' journalism. They speak up, but they don't operate by any rule. For journalists, we have ethical rules that guide journalism profession. You also get a balanced report, particularly if there's an incident, you speak to both parties and you don't take sides. But you find out that sometimes the social media posts just reports as it's happening. It's news on the go. There's no follow-up. There's no verification. Sometimes even based on hearsay, which rubs off on the conventional media practice. But like I said, it can only get better.
It can only get better. That's right. So far, what I've been able to deduce from what you really see as freedom is not just, be free to say what you want, how you want it. Freedom of the press and freedom of expression has to do with, the press being able to cater for themselves, the press having the right environment, having the right things, you talked about welfare, you talked about good environment and all that to make reports and all that. And you made mention of a very good legacy here, Dele Giwa. He has set the pace for, journalism in Nigeria. Looking at the present time, do you think our current journalists are getting it right? They are doing it right in the aspect of ensuring democracy and freedom of the people?
Certainly, we are doing it right, but I also have to state that there's no absolute freedom anywhere. A common saying is that where your right ends, where that of another person begins. So, and that's where the ethics of journalism comes in. You cannot just go to press without verifying your stories. Investigation that is complete means that you reflect both sides and even make recommendations based on your findings. Like I cited an instance earlier that you're carrying out an investigation. You don't just put out the situation. As a journalist, you also make recommendations based on the facts. You look for experts who can give recommendations on the way out or way forward on every situation. Dele Giwa is our forerunner, as it were. But a lot of people journalists are going through trial.
That's right.
In the present day, in their own way. Maybe not. Some people have even paid the supreme price. During IMN shites, those days, even during Boko Haram, I know a channel's photographer was gunned down. During protests in Abuja, I think the same channels too, a reporter was gunned down by the protesters. So journalists have also paid the supreme price, not necessarily passive bomb, but in the course of the job. And that's why we keep talking about the need for their welfare, for insurance, to ensure that if it happens like this, the person's family will be taken care of.
That's true.
Even those who are injured, so that you could get medical attention, so that we don't have a situation where you find members having to rally around to raise funds, just take care of a colleague who was injured maybe in the course of the job, or even takes ill, because most organizations, like I said earlier, don't actually cater for that, because there's no law that is binding. And we expect that in the coming future, there was an attempt at having a media wage bill, and such an act or law will also provide not just the wages but the welfare and what it entails, so that anybody who is starting up a media organization knows that you have a responsibility towards the people working with you. And expectedly, it will also encourage the media practitioners to go even beyond the extra mile in ensuring that they do their duty. So journalists in present day are actually doing enough, doing well, but there's always room for improvement.
For more. That's true. That's right. So you said where someone's right stops, that's where another begins. Let's talk about this right of freedom of expression. I don't know, is there a way that the people can, this is just my sincere, I just want to understand, is there a way the people now can express themselves without protest?
Certainly. Like, your program is an avenue. There are a lot of programs like that. We also watch where communities, individual groups approach the media. There are several ways. You can do interviews, you can run stories on investigative stories on whatever issue there is. The protest is usually the last resort, because I don't think it always starts with protest. It's when all else has failed that you find out that most, if you start with protest, are you backtracking to now come to dialogue? You start with dialogue, probably when dialogue. I want to talk about protest. It's usually peaceful protest.
Exactly.
If it's violent, then it's against the law. So that's why I say, when we say people have a right to protest, it's peaceful protest within the ambit of the law. Anything that is violent is outside the law and will attract punishment. But sometimes the security agencies are reluctant because they will tell you that it is ambushed, that they infiltrated, that the protest could be hijacked and all by other interests. And sometimes there have been instances where government and people in authority have been accused of sponsoring something. So it's difficult to distinguish between when it's genuine protest or when it has political undertone or when people want to serve their personal purposes or interests. So, but protest is a legitimate way of expression, but it has to be peaceful.
Indeed. Okay, now let's talk. I like the way this conversation is going. Let's talk about journalists now. You said they're supposed to set the agenda, but sometimes the media, journalists can be used as a tool of propaganda. There's that controversy of brown envelopes, sponsorship, and you made mention interest. A media house might be owned by politicians, and you can't report what's against the interest. Exactly. So on that note, doesn't it affect or cripple the core value of journalism, which is fairness, authenticity, objectivity, and all that? Doesn't it cripple that core value?
Certainly, but it's to what extent? And like I said earlier, even outside in the developed countries, every media organization has interests it serves. That's the truth. But it's not to allow it overshadow or becloud the main objective. But I talked about welfare of journalists.
That's right.
A situation the so-called brown envelope tribes because the welfare of journalists is not taken care of. I'm part of those who argue that if a lawyer gets an appearance fee and he's paid for his services, then there should be provision under the law guaranteeing that a journalist also gets paid for his job, gets paid for the services he's rendering. But when you have a journalist who is working without pay, yes, some people ask, why will you work without pay? Probably they need to do a census of how many graduates out there looking for jobs that are unemployed. So some people believe that if you have an opportunity to work, even though it's without pay, you take it up and keep busy. They say the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So you do it and probably improve yourself in the process. And you know that certain media organization, as a journalist, is not that easy. It's not sometimes any media organization can withstand. Even if you say people should collaborate and come together, how many media organizations can we have? We'll certainly have people who are working for media owners. So that's why their rights and welfare should be catered for, should be properly protected under the law. So if the welfare of journalists is taken care of, I think the issue of brown envelope will reduce. But there are people also who are not, the organizations who have clearly come out to state, we don't accept it. Because they know they've taken care of their reporters and correspondents and everybody that works with them. That's why they can make such bold statements. But where you've not done that, you cannot make such bold statements. You cannot say, report any staff of my organization that accepts inducement, because you know that you've not done your part. So if we take care of that, I think it will also be taken care of. But in terms of interest, it's not just about the journalist. It's mostly about the media owner. Because no matter how patriotic a journalist is, if you're patriotism, you're working with a media owner who is not that patriotic or who does not believe in the same ethics you're trying to uphold. For some of them, it's about the bottom line. It's a business, and they have to stay afloat. So if you're going to run stories that will maybe affect interests that sponsor them or where they get their sponsorship, they are certainly not going to allow it. That's the truth. So that's the problem the journalists often find themselves in.
And always, as long as the welfare is tampered with, it will definitely tamper with the result, which is being fair, objective, and being authentic. Probably when there is an occurrence and they're like, don't report this, and then they give them a tip, they don't report it because at that moment they need that.
But there are even reporters that send the report and he's killed. There is a level. You have a reporter, you have line editors, you have the editor, then the media owner. So you could even send it before even gets is killed.
That's true.
Some of the politicians also go to media organizations and try to protect their interests, as it were. But if their interests are in line with the national interest and public interest.
That's true.
That's the question.
Correct. Let's come to present time and in Nigeria and the rising insecurity. There was this latest protest of students, I think, in Edo State coming to protest against insecurity. The insecurity is rising. I don't know if I should say it's going down or it's rising, but we're seeing a lot, like you made mention. It's becoming like a daily thing. It's becoming like a culture where we see kidnap here, ransom here, headsmen here, clashes here. It's now becoming like every day when you tune into your TV, there's always something that breaks your heart. Do you think insecurity has affected the press and how the people express themselves in Nigeria?
Not really, or maybe to some extent. But that, like, let's say during peak of Boko Haram, I know there was effort by government for media organization to play down activities of the insurgents.
That's right.
Because that time sometimes you see insurgents kill this number, and it was discovered that media publicity was like part of the oxygen that was feeding the insurgents, in addition to the terrorism funders and all of that. So I know there was effort for media to play down, especially reporting in their cover. It could be inside using a headline. It could be part of the reporter, because yes, people are killed, they need to report it, but not using it as headline news or using it on their cover, because it was like something that was it was believed to be something that was encouraging the insurgents, yes, the insurgents to see that they are making inroad against governments and insurgents. Because if you keep having, it looks like the government and security agents are losing the war, because you always have reports of the killed number of people. So sometimes you have that kind of situation. But for journalists, I don't think insecurity has adversely affected them. But you have to always create a balance between ethical reporting and national security and patriotism. If there are reports that you think might escalate the situation, like instead of saying, let me give an instance, 100 persons killed during this, you could just report that there was this situation of insecurity happened, but not headline with a number. Or like when we also profile, like the issue of Fulani headers and all. I know that the media was meant to just say headers, not Fulani, so that you don't incite, or you say Muslims, Christians, not to use such language, so that if it's Christians, the Muslim will not be incited. If it's Muslim, you also balance it. It does not. I don't think it actually takes away anything from your report.
Okay.
If you're conscious of your reason for maybe toning it down, not actually watering it, it's still in your report. It might not be
A headline.
It might not be flashing, so that it does not catch negative, it does not have negative effect. For the students that were arrested, protested,
and released.
it's actually not the first time that security agencies have clamped down on protesters. I think I've spoken about it sometimes out of fear that it could be hijacked. But protest is a legitimate means of communicating and expressing your views once it's peaceful. In that case, I know that the police particularly had alleged that there was interference by Russians. But I know the Russian embassy in Nigeria also denied
Such
claim. But it's common in this era, especially with FIMI, foreign information manipulation and interference, which comes sometimes manifests in some of these actions, that they fear that probably there's foreign interference. They are cashing in on what is happening in the country to incite people to protest, but you have to be able to prove it.
Exactly.
It's beyond, and they say on he who alleges lies the honors of proof. Not to just say or raise allegation, but you should be able to prove it. But the protest, according to the students, based on their own side, is increasing insecurity. They protested again, and to that extent, they had the right to protest. And detaining them for longer
time than the usual.
That's actually an infringement on their right. And if you notice, it took pressure from different quarters,
That's true.
groups, individuals, speaking for them to be released. For the students, they also reserve the right to seek redress. But sometimes Nigerians actually don't go to court because of cost of litigation and the time. So sometimes we let it slide because the processes it will take. You just let it slide. But over time, I expect that we'll be able to improve on that. There are NGOs, there's even the Legal Aid Council that also help people who feel their rights have been infringed and maybe don't have the way without to pursue it.
Don't worry. A lot on that, but we'll take a quick short break, and after that we would have more to discuss on this particular topic. So much the press has duties, and we'll be right back after the short break. And welcome back from that short break. If you're just tuning in, this is 360U Dialogue, and we've been having a wonderful conversation. I like to term it wonderful because it pertains freedom of press and freedom of expression, especially in this time of insecurity in Nigeria. I've been having that conversation with Mrs. Chizoba Ogbeche, and she's the deputy editor of Blueprint newspaper and the Nawaj vice president, North Central. Still back on security where we left, you were talking about the thin line between serving the public and national security. How can journalists really balance, because you wanted to really balance that equation, how journalists can balance serve the public and at the same time national security concerns, talking about censoring some part, reporting, not making it bold headlines just not to incite fear and tension in the people. But there are sometimes we see some reports actually pushed under the carpet, if I may use that phrase.
That's unethical. Like I said, you have to know how to manage information. Probably that's all the term, managing the information properly. So you now use it in such a way that it will escalate, especially when there is tension already. But not publishing it at all, pushing on, that's unethical. But you have a responsibility to inform the people.
Exactly.
You have to let them know. But if there are parts of the report that can incite people to violence or to attack others, or even breed discontent, because it might not be an immediate attack. It could be something that brews.
That's right.
You have a mindset about people will be changed, like the issue of Fulani herdsmen and the report. Then you know that ordinarily, after reading all those reports, that as a human being, if you encounter a Fulani person, whether a header or otherwise, your brain will tell you, be careful.
Yes.
You have to you build distrust. There's distrust. You don't believe in the people. You believe that there's a tendency to believe that every Fulani person is violent. Because it's reports you've been reading and it's something that is built in your mind. So that's why you have to manage the information properly. But killing the story completely is unethical, because the people have the right to information, and as journalists we have the responsibility to provide that information, to inform them and educate them. And we also have a right to educate them in terms of the fact that in as much as most headers are Fulanis, that it doesn't mean that every Fulani is a violent person or that every Fulani is a header. That's not actually possible.
That's true.
And there are enlightened Fulanis, even in government, but does not make them violent people. So that's why they risk danger of stereotyping and profiling.
That's true. So let's talk about, because of this whole insecurity, are journalists beginning to self-censor, and what does that mean to our public? What does that mean to democracy, just for security purpose?
And I think we've actually spoken quite on it. The self-censorship is not just about the reporter. It has to do with a collection of issues. Like I mentioned, media ownership, ideology, and all of that. So, but yes, over-censorship is an issue. But if you say managing information is a kind of censorship, but it's when it's to the extreme that it becomes a problem. And like I said, if you withhold information or water it down completely, you're not being objective, which means you're not also being ethical. It also applies that if you inflate the figures and embellish because you want to serve particular interests, you're also not being ethical and you're not being balanced. Because it's always about getting the other side of the story, creating a balance, so that the information going out is complete, that the people get to know both sides of the story instead of giving a one-sided account.
That's right. Okay, you made mention earlier, well, we were still talking about, the new media, the coming of the new media, social media. A lot of people, once an incident happens, you see a lot of people with their phone reporting live from wherever they are without being a professional journalist. In pursuit of freedom of expression, I feel everybody has that right to say a thing or, express. Acting on that state, do you think this comes with responsibility both on the government and on the people, being free to express yourself?
Yes, certainly. That's why I said earlier that there's no absolute freedom. And the issue of where your right ends is where somebody else's right starts. So as a journalist, that you have a platform and you can report events, does not mean you report, you give account of things that are not true or that didn't happen. That's why there's also provision in the law for holding journalists accountable. The issue of libel, defamation, and all of that. The newsmakers or the subject of your reportage have the right within the law to also seek redress when you give a wrong account of event. And that's why I also said earlier, they need to balance. Because you cannot hear from one side and you go to press. You need to and sometimes getting the other side is what saves you from that issue of defamation, because you are reporting accounts that were given to you. And once they are verifiable, that even if somebody decides to sue you, journalists have been sued. It's not the first time. It cannot even stop. That when you're sued, you always ensure that you can protect yourself. And we talk about saving, when you're interviewing, save records. Don't just take verbal
report
explanation accounts. Ensure that you can record, so that when the situation, and save your recording, that when the situation comes up, you can always protect yourself, be able to defend yourself. Because sometimes I had an experience. I've covered police for a while. There was a situation where a medical doctor, a fake medical doctor, he actually it was a celebrated case, took his friend's medical certificate, and got employment in Ministry of Health.
Interesting.
He was actually not practicing medicine as in a clinic, but he worked in a ministry, and he rose to become a director.
Interesting.
During COVID, that was when the thing was exposed. Was it COVID or one of the outbreaks, either COVID or I can't remember again, one of these health outbreaks that it came to light that they had to do with technical things that medical doctors, he was chairing a committee, and he didn't know some of these things. That's when they started probing and found out that he never went to the school he claimed he did and all. And I did the report after he was paraded. But you know that his lawyer persuaded him to write to my office to claim that my report was wrong. But I had recording where he even admitted, where he was interviewing and he admitted. And my office was almost going to do a retraction. But because I had evidence to prove that this guy was paraded, he owned up to this. And the person's certificate he used, the person has also come out. He was even the guy's best man. At least that's how close they were. And he stole his certificate and was working with it for, I think that thing took like over 15 years before he was exposed. But because I had that evidence and I provided it from my office, they now asked him that he can go ahead and sue us. And we didn't hear from them again. But imagine if we made that mistake of retracting the story. He could use it to now confuse the people to say this organization was wrong. So that if this organization took it out, the other ones, it's like creating doubt in the people. So in every report we're doing, we should try and always make provision for protecting ourselves, because politicians, I talked about somebody who pretended to be a medical doctor. Politicians that are public servants can be funny too, in a bid to save themselves. And if you cannot, you will now find out that you could be indicted for something that you could have exonerated yourself. So don't open yourself up for anybody to scapegoat you.
Exactly. This is for journalists now. What about for citizens? What responsibility do they have to play in when it comes to freedom of expression?
You have to be responsible in everything you're doing. The issue of libel, defamation applies to even people who are not journalists. It's not about journalists. If you publish something that is defamative, the person has the right to sue you. So, an ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So anybody posing as citizen, journalist, and reporting should also know that you have a responsibility, and you could be held responsible. So whatever you're doing, you also verify. Don't be too quick to judge because you want clicks. You want
that clickbait.
Yeah, you get. So that you should know that everybody has a responsibility towards ensuring that what you report is true. Account of what happened.
That's very
so
factual.
It's on both sides, both the citizens and journalists. You have a duty to be responsible.
That's very factual. But still on freedom of expression, the Cybercrime Act is regulating social media a fix for misinformation. From your take?
Yes, but it's actually a big impediment.
Oh, really?
Because yes, it has its good side, but sometimes it's extreme. You have a situation where the provision of the Cybercrime Act entails that the reporter needs to prove their innocence. But we say in law that on he who asserts lies the onus of proof. So, but when you now transfer the proof to the reporter, and a situation where you can just arrest the person even without charging, because most times you find out that journalists who have been arrested based on this cybercrime are actually not taken to court. It's like they arrest them, keep them for a while, then when there is noise and then they
release
and
them.
it's a law that the media is opposing, that it puts too much pressure on journalists. It's not something that we can encourage. There's need for a review of the law that protects the interests of both sides, not putting only the burden on the journalists. So yes, there should be, we should self-regulate as it were.
Okay,
self-regulate. Yes, self-regulate. We want to talk about sense. If you know that you cannot prove a situation, then don't go to press with it. Don't be in a hurry. You should not be in a hurry to report, because you could bounce back on. You could do it once, it worked, do it twice. But if you get somebody who takes litigation seriously and can afford to go or up, the person will come for you. And don't be unfortunate that maybe your media organization, when they find out that you didn't do due diligence, will hands off and you're on your own. Because nobody wants to actually carry that burden.
That's right.
So as an individual, you should protect yourself and ensure that you don't run foul of the law. And also be abreast of the provision of the law, because that's how you protect yourself. So that if somebody wants to intimidate you, you already know the provision of the law. So we should also protect ourselves. Not only wait for our media organization to stand up for us, we should be able to stand up for ourselves and also be informed.
Exactly.
In everything we are doing. Be abreast.
You know, I'm thinking of a scenario where, okay, as it's breaking right now, let's say I'm a citizen journalist, I don't know the ethics of journalism, but probably, you know what they say, when you see something, say something. And at that point, I pick up my phone and I'm reporting live. Are there instances where that can be false or that can bounce back to the person who reports?
It depends on what you're reporting. But if it that is happening, you have visual to prove that it happened, fine. You can use that visual to, it's not as if you made it up. It's the true situation of what happened. But you know where sometimes they run foul of the law is your commentary. When you start analyzing without getting, you're just looking, it's not, things are not always the way they look. You don't know the background, you don't know how it started, but you're running commentary, probably based on knowledge you had about the event earlier, but you did not verify. So the commentary, but if you're just posting an incident the way it happened, you can exonerate yourself based on that. But your commentary is what could make the person run foul of the law.
No, that's right. You know, let's talk about impact of politics here when it comes to freedom of expression. How much does, you know, politics play when it comes to freedom of expression and freedom of the press?
Well, like I said earlier, most politicians have their own interests. That's the truth. It's not about the interests of people. So for them, freedom of expression should not affect their interest. But as journalists, we are supposed to be the mouthpiece of the people. We are protecting, we are the vanguard. We protect them. So the people should take precedence over a small number of people, because the politicians make up a very minute number of the population.
That's right.
So they cannot take precedence. Their interests cannot take precedence over the interest of the people. So as journalists, you are supposed to protect the wider interest. But in doing that, you also protect yourself. Don't open yourself up for attack or litigation from that smaller number who are also powerful and well-to-do and have the resources to undermine your job. But once you ensure that you're objective and ethical in your reportage and you have evidence to protect yourself, then any attack on you will not.
But when it comes to, you know, making policy as, you know, as a government now, making policy, at what point do they, you know, draw the line or at what point does regulation, become censorship on the people and on the media?
About policies, making of the law, that's the responsibility of National Assembly, and there are processes to making the laws.
Yes.
There are usually opportunity for public hearing, even though sometimes they don't publicize it the way they should, so that people interest, like, see what's happening with the tax law.
Exactly.
Where a lot of people are raising doors that the people were not carried along. Some clauses even to the extent that some clauses were sneaked in after it has even been passed. A situation like that does not give the people the opportunity to have an input in the law, and you might have clauses or provisions that are inimical to their own interest. So, but for the making of the law, if the people are involved and they have opportunity to make an input, certainly there will be laws and policies that protect their interests.
That's right.
But when it doesn't follow the due process in the passage of the law, then the people suffer. So for the people is to be abreast and follow the proceedings of the National Assembly. Some laws are made. That's why you also amend laws. When the people cry out, those laws are amended, because the National Assembly members represent the people. They come from constituencies that have constituents who are people who can cry out to them, say, no, this law does not protect our interests and should be reviewed, repealed, or amended. Okay. So that, but that sometimes the process is a long process.
That's right.
That happen. You talked about the Cybercrime Act. There's a lot of NGOs, journalism groups are also calling for a review of the law, and expectedly at some point it will be reviewed, because some of the provisions that are seen as affecting the people negatively. And okay, the issue of censorship, like I said, personally, we are supposed to manage information that we have and present it properly, instead of exposing ourselves to litigation or attack. So, but when governments, sometimes the government of the day and the security agencies observe some of these laws in breach, is when it affects them. Or when it affects the people, often you find that they are not quick to respond.
Right.
But when they believe that it's in their own interest,
or the state's interest,
for journalists, we keep amplifying those areas that affect the people. And hopefully, at some point, the government of the day, the states, whether national, federal, at every level, will heed to the call. So it's part of our duty to amplify those issues or provisions of the law, policies that are anti-people, so that the government could look into it and review. But it's not the place of the individuals to review. There are processes to review of existing laws and policies.
That's right. I mean, well spoken, factual. I like the fact that you kept saying, exonerate yourself from litigation, because you don't just, you want to say the fact, say it as it is, call the government accountable, and then you put yourself into problem. I mean, that's problematic. Okay, let's talk about the way forward. Let's talk about the way forward. And if the press is free, I mean, the people are free to express themselves. What is the way forward for freedom of expression and freedom of the press?
Like I said, the Freedom of Information Act is supposed to be a tool for journalists to get information. But you find out that the processes sometimes can be cumbersome, because you give 14 days ultimatum, 7 days, after 7 days, 14 days, then you can take them to court. But like I said earlier, the process of going to court. And then the interest of the media organizations vary. You could start the process, you want to pursue the process as a journalist, but it's not in the interest of your organization to invest money in it, and they move on. So we need organizations or agencies that could also serve to help. That when, as an individual, maybe your organization is no longer interested, but you want to pursue, because you can follow the story of as an individual to to ensure that you get to the root of it. But you need opportunity or establishment, organization that can, there are NGOs that are doing that. They're also assisting in that direction. But there should be more. It should be something that people can, the FOI Act should be something that people can, journalists, even individuals, can fall back on to get information.
Exactly.
And also expose situations that are not in the interest of the people.
All right.
But there are a lot of obstacles
that really affects the way people yeah. Thank you so much. I wish we could go forward from here, but we have to draw the curtain. Thank you so much, Mrs. Chizoba, for coming into 360 Youth Dialogue. Such an honor. And to our wonderful guests, thank you for tuning in here on 360 Youth Dialogue, only on Third Eye Africa Television. I am Juliet Onwura. Keep watching.